Welcome to Conscious TV. You're listening to Tom and Ramon, and we have an amazing, great show. Beforehand, just wanted to let you know a couple of things about the website. Make sure you check us out at www.conscious-tv.com. Make sure you check out our new paradigm page. If you really want to change this world into a new paradigm, which is changing whether you're trying or not trying. So make sure you check out, we have a site there for water bottles that don't have any fluoride, any crap in it. We also have a section for heirloom seeds. Make sure you really do your homework with that, because sometimes they mix in the GMO with the good stuff. So, and also we are on Top Paranormal, so make sure you click on and vote for us. We would highly appreciate it. And I also want to welcome a few new countries, which my parents' home country of Dominican Republic, Puerto Rico, Lithuania, the Russian Federation, Vietnam, and Hong Kong. Thank you very much, and thank you to all the other listeners in the 46 countries.
Yay! We're getting up there.
Yeah, it's quite impressive. 46 countries. We started with what, Tom? 3, 4?
Yeah, it's amazing.
Yeah, and also last thing, if you can, please donate. It would be highly appreciated. We don't charge for the archives, so for those of you who can, you help pay for the show for those who can't. So this information that's very important gets out there to everyone. Tom?
Okay, one more thing. We had scheduled originally for March 23rd, or excuse me, March 16th, Marilyn Hughes. She's a out-of-body travel person, and she had to cancel due to some health issues, so I want to put something out there for her. Let's put out our thoughts and prayers for her and hope for a speedy recovery, and maybe we'll be able to get her on later this year when things turn the right direction for her. So, Marilyn, I hope everything's working out for you. Great. Tonight we have Jack Allis. He's an author and spiritual teacher. His most recent works are a book and feature-length DVD, both with the title of Prophesy, Challenge, and Blessing, Visions of 2012 and the Shift. He also has a new DVD entitled 2012, The Shift and the Power of Ceremony. The message Jack is guided to transmit echoes the ancient indigenous prophecies, including Maya and the Hopi. We are living in an age of monumental transformation, and one in which the world is coming to its inevitable end, so that a new and sustainable world may be born. The world is not going to end, but it will be transformed. And there's only one way to do this, and that's with the higher power of our higher consciousness and spirituality. Jack not only talks the talk, but he walks the walk of his message by being its personal embodiment. He lives minimally and close to nature in a tiny cottage on Little Okauchee Lake in Wisconsin. In his talks and workshops, he demonstrates how to practice and develop our spirituality through the use of ceremony, which includes prayer, fire ceremonies, music, and chanting. With singing, that's nice. Great timing. Oh, let's see, where was I? With singing bowls and rattles, smoking the sacred pipe, and more. He's also written a couple other books, Infinity's Flower, A Tale of 2012 and the Great Shift of the Ages, and Infinity's Children, in addition to his popular monthly newsletter. Welcome, Jack. How are we doing tonight?
I'm doing fantastic. Thanks for having me on the show. Hello to everybody out there in Internet Radio land. And it's a pleasure to be here.
Yeah. Let's, well, I kind of want to...
Can I start by just making a quick comment here?
Sure.
I really like the sound of your new paradigm page. I like the sound of that, and I like the sound of what you're doing in terms of getting information out about water and non-contaminated seeds and that sort of thing. Because that's a very important part of what's going on here. And one of the things that people hear me say all the time is I consider myself to be a new paradigm person. I'm endeavoring to live as much of a new paradigm lifestyle as I possibly can, and letting go of as much of the old paradigm stuff as I possibly can. It's not possible to let go of all of it, but but we can do a pretty good job of letting go of most of it. And whatever we don't let go of, we can always let go in our hearts, and we can let go in our spirits. So people often hear me say also that I like to recommend that people endeavor to look at the world through new paradigm eyes as opposed to their old paradigm eyes, because that's the only way that with all the craziness in our world today and all the transformation that we're in the midst of, the only way it's going to make sense is if we look at it through our new paradigm eyes, or through the eyes of our spirituality. So I like the sound of that new paradigm page and what you guys are doing there. I think we're going to be on the same. I think we're going to be on the same page here, if you get my drift.
Absolutely.
You want to hear something funny about that, Jack? Is that's actually you were one of the catalysts for that.
Oh.
Yeah, you and a couple other people who because as soon as we booked you on, I started listening to a lot of your shows, and I started hearing the new paradigm stuff, and I was like, well, we need something. So, because we're always talking about it as well, so we created a page. One of the things that I found
perhaps
amazing.
We can talk a little bit more about that later, just in terms of why having a water supply, and why having heirloom seeds, and why having backup food supply, why those things are important. Maybe we can touch upon that as we dive into the subject here tonight.
Right.
Yeah, definitely can.
Okay.
Yeah. What I was gonna start with was, what's the importance of? Let's actually start with the water. Why is water so important, especially the type of water that you get, for example?
Well, I think, and you may have read in the book, I actually it's so important for us to be close to sources of pure, non-contaminated water. I can think of a few things in life that are more important than that under any circumstances. And I am very blessed. There's a little company about 30 miles or so from where I live. It's called Century Springs, and they actually are a water bottling company, and they're bottling water that comes up from an underground spring. So, and I have the water delivered to my house once a month in 5-gallon bottles. So that's my source of water, and I feel so good about it. I feel so good, and I feel so trusting. That this water is the real thing. I can not only tell that it's the real thing by when I boil it. Nothing happens in terms of all sorts of little goodies don't all of a sudden
right.
come out of the water and start floating around in there. But I can also tell by the taste, and I can also tell by the feel of it, because water is important for a lot of different reasons. Of course, it's important nutritionally for us to have a clean supply of water. Our body needs that from a nutritional point of view. But the other thing I always like to say about water is good, clean, pure water also has something that we refer to as, it retains a natural energy charge, if you will, that's often referred to as vitality. In other words, it still has life to it, and we can refer to this life gets a little bit abstract in terms of what it really is, but it's like a spirit essence or a vitality or a life force, and that's the sort of life force that exists in. Not only does it exist in natural forms of water, but it also exists in natural forms of food. So, in other words, we're eating food that's really alive and that really has some, not only nutritional value but also vitality or spiritual value to it. So, in many ways, then, our natural food and our natural water have these wonderful qualities that are so needed for us if we're going to be living, in an optimal new paradigm kind of world. And if you want to even talk about it a little bit more later on, when we talk about having a source of water, what I have here in my home is, and again, this is something that I think is a good idea for people to do, even if this stuff about the shift that we're talking about, 2012 and the shift and all the paradigm shifts and earth changes that are prophesized to be occurring at this time, and which we can already see occurring at this time. Even if this thing called the shift is just a bunch of malarkey, it's just a bunch of nonsense, and there's no validity to it whatsoever, which, of course, I don't believe that's true for a second. But even if that was the case, it is always a good idea for us as human beings to have a backup supply of water as well as a backup supply of food. I don't think it's a good idea for anybody to be drinking tap water these days, unless you live in a very fortunate place up in the mountains or in a place like Mount Shasta where the public water is actually pumped from natural springs. There's a few places like that remaining in the world, but in general, our tap water is not to be trusted for a lot of different reasons in terms of toxic chemicals and all sorts of stuff that gets in there. So it's important for us to have a backup supply of water, and it's also important for us to have a backup supply of food. And by backup supply of food, what I'm referring to here is food with good shelf life, that can hold out for a while, and that doesn't necessarily need to be refrigerated or anything like that. What I do for backup food is I just go to the health food store and I buy bulk beans and grains and nuts and things like that. That last forever if you just stick them in a glass jar. Most of those things will last a couple of years. Before anything really bad begins, before they start to decompose. And then it's also possible for us to get a wide variety of canned fruits and vegetables these days too that are still are of a pretty good quality in terms of, it looks like it's a pretty natural product, and there are virtually no preservatives in there other than salt and water. So and the reason for that is we live in an age where we are all very, very dependent upon this technological infrastructure that we have, and part of the technological infrastructure is not only our food supply, but also is the ways of preserving our food supply, in refrigerators and those sorts of things. And our technological infrastructure is very, very vulnerable. I mean, this infrastructure could go down any time. And again, I'm not even talking about this in the context of the shift. When you start looking at things that might happen with the shift as far as Earth changes and paradigm shifts and stuff, that just gives us another reason to believe that our infrastructure could go down any time. But, if the infrastructure goes down, we need to be prepared, to take care of ourselves. And one of the new paradigm messages here, you'll hear me parrot over and over and over again, when we form our new paradigm attitude or our new paradigm way of living, one of the most important components of a new paradigm lifestyle is us reassuming complete responsibility for our own lives. Because this is something that most of us have forgotten to do in the modern world, because we live in a system that encourages us to be so hideously, dependent upon the system to provide everything for us. And so we basically forget. We forget how to feed ourselves, and we forget how to prepare our food properly, and we forget how to have natural sources of water, and we basically forget how to take responsibility for living our own lives, because we expect somebody else, to do it for us. And the system is always more than happy to step into the gap and to provide all those things that we're no longer capable of providing for ourselves. So taking responsibility, and taking responsibility is also a very, very important component of our spirituality that we can get to in a little while too. So taking responsibility is a very, very important thing. And, having a backup supply of food and water is all part of just, taking that precaution and taking steps, to take care of ourselves, if and when the time comes. And in the context of the shift, I think it's even more important to have a backup supplies of food and water. And, it's also important to think about, the energy and those kinds of things too. For those of us who live in a cold climate, it's a good idea to, to have a wood stove or something like that, to keep us warm. And so that's
right.
So that's always a good idea, and I would recommend that everybody do that. For myself, I just have probably a little over 3 months supply of water, and probably got about 25-gallon bottles, and I probably have about a 3+ month supply of food. And so that's all the farther ahead I'm thinking here, because I'm thinking if things ever really do go down, and if they go down in a long-term kind of way, I think whatever is going to happen is going to probably happen within that 3-month time frame, as far as people coming together and pooling their resources and getting to the point where we can indeed take care of ourselves without all the assistance that we receive from our infrastructure, from our technological infrastructure.
Right.
Yeah.
Especially right now. I mean, geez, I've been following the activity on the sun, and it's really starting to wake up right now. They just had a flare here last week that I think they said that it affected some stuff in China, if I remember right. Anyways, boy, all it would take was, and we are really overdue for a major event like the one back in, what was it, 1889 or whatever it was that.
Yeah, when they took down all the telegraph lines,
fried all the telegraph lines and everything. I mean, something like that happened and cut out our electrical and communications infrastructure. I mean, it'd be 3 months before we majority of things were back online.
Well, you know, and I'm going to say something here, and this may be a really crazy thing to say, but I'm going to say it anyway. I'll bet that our infrastructure is even more vulnerable today than it was then, and the reason for that is how interconnected it all is, you know, with satellites and all this other stuff. And, I mean, there's any number of ways that that a dent could be made in our satellite system, and so much of what we depend upon infrastructure-wise is. It's all interconnected, and it's this kind of web that envelops the planet. And if one part of it goes out, if some of these big time computers that really run a lot of stuff, if a few of those go out, the whole system goes down. So it is a very vulnerable system, in spite of what people would like us to think.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, one of the things that I really appreciate about this whole new paradigm thinking is, for example, on the new paradigm page, there's these houses called earth ships, and what they have, it's completely self-sustained, and what they have in the kitchen is an area for you to grow your food. So when they make your house, or if you can make it yourself, it's not that expensive compared to a conventional house. But let's talk the difference between your message, Jack, and fear-mongering. Because I know some people try to put that on you, but from reading your stuff and listening to your stuff, I don't see you in that way.
Well, my message may frighten a lot of people, but it's not because there's any fear-mongering going on. If my message frightens people, it has more to do with them than it does with the message here. And just to say it, to put it in a nutshell, one of the primary reasons why this age we're living in promotes so much fear in so many people has to do with one very, very simple thing. And that is, and this is kind of what the essence of the shift in a nutshell, in terms of what it is and in terms of what this means. The shift basically refers to this time that we're living in, which is a time of monumental transformation. And this is something that happens on the order of once every 26,000 years. So this is very, very big. It does not happen very often. Happens once on the order of every 26,000 years as a function of our solar system's journey, the Earth and the whole rest of our solar system's journey that it takes as it moves through the universe. And we're at that point on the cycle. We're at that point on the cycle where one part of the cycle is coming to its inevitable end, which always, as in all of these cycles, which means this provides the opportunity for the rebirth of a new cycle to take over from that point. So we're back to the good old cycle of birth, life, death, and regeneration that we can see, playing out on so many levels. We can see it playing out in nature every day. We can see it playing out in our physical bodies, and we can see it playing out all over the place. So this is a very big, grand cosmic cycle that we're talking about. And basically the shift refers to at this time, at this point of the cycle, or at this time we're referring to, we are experiencing a shifting of the Earth's vital energy fields. I'm just going to say that again because of how important that is. It is a shifting of the Earth's vital energy fields. And this is the primary cause of all the transformation that we're talking about. Now, the primary reason that people become so afraid of this is because people are afraid of change. And the change that we're dealing with here this is very, very monumentally huge change. We are talking about one world coming to its inevitable end. Our old paradigm world is part of that. One world coming to its inevitable end, so that a new world, may be born in its place. And so the primary thing that people fear is they fear change. And when people hear people like me or talk about the shift, a very accurate way of labeling the shift is to say that this is not about doomsday. This is not about the world coming to an end. But this is about the world as we know it coming to an end. And that's what begins to scare people. And it begins to scare people because they're still tremendously invested in that old paradigm world, which cannot possibly sustain itself. So one of the keys to all this, one of the keys to transforming this message from, one that's fear-based to one that's very inspiring and one that's very, one that's very, very positive for people, is to talk about the importance of embracing this transformation as opposed to pushing against it, as opposed to resisting it. Because once we begin to embrace the transformation, once we as human beings begin to resonate with these shifting energies that we're talking about, then at that point, the transformation isn't scary anymore. It's just change, and invariably, the people who are the most afraid of this are people who are still very, very clinging, if you will, to a lot of the energy of the old paradigm world. In other words, they don't want that world to end. They want it to be fixed and to go on, and that's the world that they have their emotional investment in. Well, that's what people are afraid of, and so embracing this transformation is crucial to all this. Don't resist it. Don't push against it. If you resist it and push against it, those people who resist it and push against it and who cling to old paradigm energies, those are the people that are having a really, really rough time right now. Having a hard time emotionally, a hard time mentally, in many cases a hard time practically. Those are the people that are having a difficult time, and unless they get to a point where they can begin to embrace the transformation and embrace these new paradigm energies, they could be in for a very rough ride here. So that's one way of responding, to the fear aspect of this. It's all about fear of change.
So I want to go back to the 26,000 year thing real quick. Now I've heard a couple different people that have talked about this being a much more significant 26,000 year cycle than your quote unquote average, whatever that means. Where we have it takes 256,000 years for our solar system to rotate completely around the galaxy, and then there's those that have theorized that there's a 64 million year cycle that our galaxy takes in the universe. So what they're theorizing is that this is a very unique event that it's like the 26,000 year cycle on a 64 million year scale. So which would mean that this cycle that we're actually finishing right now and going into the new cycle is an extremely unique event historically. So I don't.
Okay.
Have you heard of this?
Well, you're actually getting into some stuff that I have to say I'm not all that knowledgeable of as far as these grander cycles that you're referring to. I'm interested in learning about that stuff, but you're actually entering an area of this that I'm really not that knowledgeable of. So you know more about that than I do. I do know that this 26,000 year cycle that I've been hearing so much about. I know it's a big deal.
Right. Oh, absolutely.
Whether it's 26,000 or whether it's longer. And there's a lot of different ways of measuring this cycle too, which is an important part of this. And this is where David Wilcock was the one who coined the term convergence, in which a lot of different forces and factors seem to be coming together or converging at the same time here. And the time seems to be the time surrounding winter solstice 2012. There are a lot of different ways to measure it, and a lot of our ways of measuring it can be measured in old paradigm scientific methodology. A lot of the ways that we have of measuring this doesn't come so much from the scientific community, but there's an awful lot of channel sources on this in terms of information that's basically coming from outside in, as far as our understanding of the photon belt and the 26,000 year cycle and those sorts of things. Almost the kind of information that you really couldn't understand. You really couldn't understand it properly, or couldn't understand it as well as you could unless you were, say, living on, outside of our, solar system somewhere, outside of our galaxy somewhere, and watching it from the outside in. You could get kind of a different perspective on how these things work. Well, a lot of our sources of information do come from sources like that. They come from channeled sources, and they come from sources in the so-called spirit world. So, we're dealing with a lot of different ways of measuring this, and a lot of different kinds of information about the same thing. And another one of the more easy to measure aspects of this has to do with the precession of the equinoxes, which also, from an astrological point of view, just happens to be a 26,000-year cycle that it takes for the precession of the solstices and the equinoxes to run through their entire to run through all the signs of the zodiac and all the constellations. That too is a 26,000-year cycle. So there's a bunch of different ways of measuring this, and they all seem to be telling us, in many ways, they all seem to be telling us pretty much the same thing about this time. And as long as we're talking about the time aspect of this and these dates and predictions, I'd like to say one other thing that's important for people to know about the shift, and this really is one of the most important things for people to get lodged into their heads, because this is an area where there really is a lot of disinformation about this. And this has to do with the specific date, December 21st, 2012, and it has to do with a lot of the variations of this date, as far as a lot of the predictions about things that are going to happen at certain dates, and those sorts of things. Well, one of the things that I learned, and the primary source of my information comes from a lot of different sources, but one of the primary sources of my information is the ancient indigenous wisdom. And I'm learning a lot more about that lately, primarily from first-hand sources, actually elders from various cultures, most predominantly the Mayan culture, who are telling me a lot of these things firsthand. But to understand the shift as a point in time or a specific date, where everything's going to happen all at once, kind of like a big bang. December 21st, 2012 is going to roll around, and the north and south electromagnetic poles are going to shift, something like that. To think of it in terms of a specific date or point where everything's going to happen all at once is really a pretty huge misunderstanding of what the shift actually means. The shift is more a window of time. It's more of a process. It's more of a gradual process. We could discuss, how big the window is and how long this process takes. There's a lot of different theories on that, and there's also a lot of different theories about whether December 21st, 2012 is perhaps the midpoint of that window or close to the midpoint of that window. There's a lot of discussions and a lot of ideas around this. But what's important to glean from all this is the fact that we really should not be thinking in terms of specific dates and predictions and things like that. This is a process, and it's more of a gradual process taking place over time. And we also know for certain about the shift. We know that we're already in this window. We know that the shift has started. We know that it's happening now. We know this, in a lot of different ways and for a lot of different reasons. We know this. We know it because we can see it happening. For one thing, the shift is happening. It's occurring, and that's pretty apparent. We can feel it, and we can see it. And once we become aware of the fact that the shift has already started, it's already happening, and I also believe that I'm not sure about December 21st, 2012 actually being the midpoint of this window. I think it's very close to the midpoint of this window. But one of the things that we also learn when we begin to see it in this way, and once we realize that the shift has already started, is that all of a sudden all these dates, all these predictions really lose all of their significance. Because if we know the shift has started, and if we know we're getting close to that midpoint of that window, wherever that is, we know that none of these dates and predictions they lose all of their significance. Basically, the only time that matters is now, today, this moment. There's nothing to wait for. There's nothing to wait for a year and a half from now or anything like that. Anybody who is engaged in waiting for something that's going to happen to us in the future is really wasting their time in relationship to the part that we can play in all this. So that's a very, very important feature of this. It's happening now, and there's nothing to wait for. It's time to get to work. It's time to get to work. This moment, today.
Absolutely. Okay, I gotta go off subject for a second, because where I sit here at my computer while we're doing this interview. There's a window right in front of me, and I looked up while you were talking, and there was a cloud that was a spiral. It looked like it was just like a 2.5 turn spiral, and I was like, wow, that is amazing. And then behind that spiral, a freaking UFO just popped up and went across It was a classic silver.
Hey, let me look out my window now.
Bright silver, and it looked like maybe a quarter of the way across my vision here in the window, and then it just disappeared. So I'm just going, wow. I'm just going, wow. I'm just going, wow.
I wish I could see out my window. I'd like to.
Yeah.
I'm just going, wow.
Now, was the spiral that you mentioned, that wasn't on your computer screen? It was.
No, this is a cloud.
Oh, a cloud outside, you mean?
Correct.
You mean outside the window?
Yes.
Okay.
Is it one of your friends, John?
It's interesting that you would say that, because I've had several sightings in my life that certainly, if I couldn't say they were UFOs, I know that they certainly were something, paranormal or supernatural. And it's very, very common whenever I have those kinds of sightings to see spiral-like clouds. They look like clouds of vapor, clouds of energy, kind of swirling around. It's very, very similar to what the aurora borealis looks like when it's really very pronounced and very, very huge. I don't know how many, if you guys have ever seen that, where you live, but every once in a while we see it here in Wisconsin. But it's very like that. It's kind of like a swirly cloud of energy.
Yeah.
It's very kind of aurora borealis-like. And on the times when I've had sightings, the sky always takes on that kind of it always seems to take on that kind of an appearance. It has that kind of a wispy cloud-like energy formations. And whenever I'm at Deer Mountain in California, which is high altitude and way up there, and you see things in the sky there that you just can't see, and down in lower elevations anymore. The sky there and the Milky Way there has that same swirly cloud-like energy cloud-like appearance. So it sounds like that might have been something similar to what you just saw.
Well, was just I was just like, my jaw was dropping, and I was going, okay, this is cool. I was going,
all right.
Thanks, guys.
I had a similar experience.
Now, Tom, has anything like that ever happened to you before when you've been, like doing your radio show?
Not for the radio show. No, I actually had nobody really knows this, but we had a little bit of a flub here this week trying to get this interview in, and right before that attempted interview, I'll put it that way, I had one of the most amazing visions in the sky. The sun was almost going, it was just above the horizon, and the way the clouds were going by, I had a rainbow cloud. That's the only way to describe it, because it wasn't a rainbow, and it was huge, and it only lasted for about the first minute of when we started that interview that we attempted to do. But it lasted for about a minute, and I got sort of a download that, yes, this is good information. This is right. You're going the right direction. It was amazing confirmation for me that what Ramon and I are doing, and what you're doing, and what all the guests that we're bringing on our show are doing is the right thing. We are, doing our part to try to take the world into this new paradigm in a successful and easiest possible way that we can.
Well, that what that amounts to for you too personally, Tom, is it amounts to a dimensional breakthrough of sorts, because most of the kinds of things you're describing, are happening just about all the time. It's just a question of we just can't see them because we're not in the proper, state of mind or state of consciousness to be able to see them. But then when we are capable of kind of breaking through dimensionally as far as our consciousness is concerned, it's at that point where we begin to to see those sorts of things. And so I would guess also that you are probably, plus having two of those sightings in a week's period of time, that would tend to indicate that you're tending to break through some things, yourself personally, as far as your own perception and as far as your own ability to flip dimensions. So,
right. Well, I will definitely confirm that.
Enjoy the journey.
Oh, well, I've been on this journey for 23 years now, so yes, okay. It is an amazing world that we live in. Absolutely amazing world.
So how do we top that, Tom? Huh?
What's that?
How do we top that?
Yeah, exactly.
Now I've got to talk. Now I've got to talk again about the.
Oh yeah, there's plenty to top that. Yeah, there's plenty out there. Yeah. So, okay, well, let's pop back to the book a little bit. The title of your book, it really will put a question mark in people's minds. What is the challenge?
Oh, all kinds of challenges. We as human beings are going to be confronted with challenges in relationship to the shift, and there's not just one challenge. I could harken back to what I said a few minutes ago in terms of the challenge of the monumental transformations that we will all be in the midst of. I mean, certainly that is one aspect of it. But if you get more specific about the challenges, we're talking about paradigm shifts, shifting from an old paradigm to a new paradigm. I think one of our most significant challenges, and this is where my message may differ from quite a few of the New Agers as far as what I'm about to say. But and again, this is an area where virtually all the indigenous wisdom agrees with what I'm about to say. And when you hear what I'm about to say, you can understand why the indigenous wisdom agrees with it. But I happen to think that part of this shifting from one world to another world will involve the death or the collapse of our old paradigm world, and that could take many different forms in terms of how that's going to happen. But certainly that will be one of the challenges that we'll all be forced to deal with. And let me just say something about that, because that for a lot of people that may sound like a really kind of a radical statement, but the reason it's not a radical statement is because this old paradigm world is it is a non-sustainable world. It's built upon a foundation that is basically non-sustainable. The foundation of our old paradigm world is a foundation which places its primary emphasis upon matter or materialism, accumulating as much matter as possible. It also is built upon the foundation of controlling the forces of nature in the interest of accumulating our matter. And this is not, and the indigenous people have been telling us this for thousands and thousands of years. This is not a world that can survive. It's not a world that can sustain itself, because it's basically built upon a foundation that it's out of balance. It's out of whack with divine law, and it's out of whack with natural law. So this is a world that cannot survive. So certainly the death or the collapse of the old paradigm will be one of those. Will be a significant challenge for virtually all of us. And I don't know what form that's going to take, or what's going to happen, or there are all kinds of different possibilities as far as that's going to happen. And that's just one area of change, or one area of challenge, because we human beings aren't the only things that are going through this process of change.
Right.
Virtually our entire solar system is going through this change. Our sun is going through this change. Our Earth, our planet Earth, is going through this change, and we're all going through this change together. And certainly, Mother Earth is experiencing many of the same things that we're all experiencing, the same shifting energy, and we're all experiencing these same fields, if you will, of transformation. And Mother Earth is feeling it too. This is a time of cleansing, and it's a time of purification for Mother Earth. And along with that comes a wide array of earth changes. We can already see some of these earth changes happening in terms of a lot of the extreme weather that we're experiencing, a lot of the earthquake and volcano activity that is just increasing at an amazingly accelerating rate. I understand that there were some big events in New Zealand and the Philippines just a few days ago, as far as a volcano in the Philippines and a rather huge earthquake in New Zealand. So, and this stuff is just the frequency of it is just increasing exponentially as far as the earth change kinds of activities. Global warming is another one. The planet is definitely warming up as a function of these shifting energy fields.
All the planets are warming up.
Yeah, the whole solar system's warming up, plus the sun. So that would be another example of the Earth changes. And of course, we have all the theories about the shifting of the north-south electromagnetic poles. As I understand it, this is something that does happen. And I've read a lot of very compelling theories to indicate that this is something that would happen also on the order, perhaps, of once every 26,000 years. And we can see scientifically that the Earth's electromagnetic fields are diminishing, and they are diminishing quite significantly. They've been doing this for a couple thousand years now. And
the North Pole,
Pardon
I
me?
was gonna say, and the North Pole is actually the magnetic North Pole is actually moving pretty fast.
Yeah, a lot faster than it used to.
Yeah,
Well, I
they
think,
had to change the runways.
This is something we really don't understand. This could happen in a lot of different ways. Maybe it'll shift down a little bit, and then maybe it'll shift back. I think electromagnetism is a force that tends to wiggle around a little bit, and it definitely is a force that we don't understand very well as far as through our old paradigm scientific eyes. So there's every indication to believe that that the Earth is going to be continuing to experience these Earth changes, and certainly that would quite likely could be another one of the phenomena that will be a challenge for us as human beings. As far as my evidence on these kinds of things are concerned, the last time the Earth experienced something comparable to what we're on the verge of experiencing now happened in the neighborhood of 13,000 years ago, which takes our 26,000-year cycle and cuts it in half. So we've got a mini cycle within the bigger cycle here. But there's lots of evidence to indicate that 13,000 years ago, that was the last time the Earth experienced a flooding of massive proportions that was so huge that certain continents went under and other continents rose to replace them. So that was the last time that the Earth really had a major facelift, and we don't know for certain whether or not the facelift we're looking at now is going to be that big or not that big. There's so many things that we don't. There's so much more about this we don't understand than we do understand. We do know that there are a lot of possibilities, and I also think it's fairly certain that as far as us as human beings, being confronted with challenges in relationship to this, I believe that is also a certainty. But this too is something that it's necessary for us to kind of flip around and reframe and see it in the right way, because challenges for us as human beings are always blessings, and challenges, even in our individual lives, it's always the challenges that we face in life that are, our primary springboards, for us to take the next step or to learn whatever it is we need to learn next. And very often it's challenges, that force us to do the things we need to do and to learn the things that we need to learn. And that's very much what the nature of these challenges is. One of my favorite mantras in relationship to the shift is that it's necessary for us to learn how to transform these challenges into the blessings that the divine spirit of a living universe created them to be. Because that's basically what they are. So challenges aren't necessarily bad things. Like change, they can be perceived as bad things, and they can also be perceived as wonderful things. It's just a question of us, again, embracing the transformation and embracing these challenges and learning what it is, what there is to learn from them, as opposed to fighting them or seeing them as bad things. So
I like the old saying, if life gives you lemons, make lemonade.
Yeah.
Okay.
I was gonna say something. My dad always says, God will choke you. No, God would tighten up the rope, but He won't choke you.
Okay. Well, I think the shift is basically forcing us to do what we need to do anyway, and that's kind of the beauty of it. And one of the things that the shift is forcing us to do as human beings, it's forcing us to to develop and enhance our spirituality, because one of the things that we learn is in order to confront these challenges, as many spiritual people have learned, that our primary tool and our primary weapon to do something about challenges and to transform them into blessings is the higher power of our higher consciousness and spirituality. So in order for us to survive these times and in order for us to flourish and create the new world, it's going to be necessary for us to do that with the power of our spirituality, because that really is that's really a very, very important lesson that we need to learn here. When I talked about the old paradigm world kind of having everything upside down, that was the primary thing that the old paradigm world had upside down, and that's where the old paradigm world kind of went off course. The old paradigm world is basically a world that places its primary emphasis upon matter and things in the material world to the exclusion of the spiritual world. And what we need to do is we need to flip that around and get everything in the right order again as far as priorities are concerned. And one of the lessons that we learn on the spiritual path, and you're not going to hear me say anything more important than what I'm about to say here, and that's this. One of the things that we learn as spiritual people is virtually everything that's manifested in this material world of ours is manifested, or we manifest, or is manifested by virtue of our connection with Spirit. In other words, everything springs from Spirit. And again, we have a wonderful lesson to be learned here from our indigenous relatives all around the planet, who this is how they lived. You know, they not only lived trusting in Spirit, but they also lived trusting their relationship with the forces of nature and with Mother Earth. That's how, you know, their life, you know, manifested so nicely for them, and that's how, you know, Mother Earth took care of them, and that's how Spirit took care of them. You know, they had their priorities in order. And this is what the shift is forcing us to re-examine and forcing us to do as human beings once again.
Koyana Squatty. Is that pronounced right?
What does that mean?
Life out of balance.
Okay.
That's actually, I think it's a Hopi word, if I remember right.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Sounds tricky pronouncing those indigenous words.
Oh, I know.
We white folks read them literally the way they're spelled, and it always, you know, sounds completely different.
Yeah.
You know, when they're pronounced properly. I don't know if you've ever attempted to pronounce any Mayan, but I mean, you'll read the Mayan word, you know, from the letters phonetically, and then when you hear Mayans say you know, the same thing, the way it sounds in Mayan, it's completely different. It's completely different. It's like the letters. It's like the letters don't even count anymore. I mean, it's just.
No, I just got back from Honolulu for work. I was over there for a few days, and the Hawaiian language. Oh my word! I mean, trying to pronounce some of those names are just wow. and then the Hawaiians over there I mean, they roll it right off their tongue, and it's just amazing, absolutely amazing.
I wanted to read one part of the book. A small paragraph is chapter 2 in Jack's book. The primary source of our protection in these times of monumental earth changes and paradigm shift, and the primary source of our power to create the new world of light and spirit, is our higher consciousness and spirituality.
Hear, hear.
That's it.
Yeah.
It's the primary source of our protection, and it's the primary source of our power.
So, Jack,
it always comes back to that.
So, Jack, what can we do to increase our perception of the other realities and our spirituality?
Well, let me answer that in a way that is probably more simple than you might expect. Because again, when we talk about enhancing our spirituality, when we talk about developing our spirituality, when we talk about, you know, the process of ascension, which you're hearing about so much in today's world in relationship to the shift, these are things again that can be made so unnecessarily complicated by so many of the so-called experts in terms of, you know, how we actually do this. You know, you can hear me talking about enhancing our spirituality or raising the frequency of our vibration, or, you know, resonating with the energy fields, or any of that kind of stuff. And, you know, it may sound like you know, fancy words and all that, but, you know, there may be a lot of people who are still going, well, okay, you know, it sounds nice, but, you know, how do you do that? What are the actual nuts and bolts of this in terms of, you know, how do you actually make that happen? And here's where our spirituality, and we're developing our spirituality, really can be traced back to some very kind of simple and very kind of self-evident things. And it has to do basically with how we live our lives. And it has to do with how we live our lives, you know, here in this earth plane. And these are things that virtually, what I'm about to say as far as developing our spirituality is concerned, these are things that virtually every spiritual tradition on this planet has agreed about for thousands and thousands of years, at least everyone that's worth its salt. And they all tell us the same thing. And again, this is something that our indigenous relatives also tell us the same thing. Excuse me. They tell us that we as human beings are at our spiritual peak, and if we are endeavoring to enhance our spirituality or to evolve our spirituality, it's necessary to do that by virtue of living life with certain feelings. Living life with certain feelings. And I'm going to tell you specifically what the feelings are. And anybody who embarks upon any kind of spiritual learning or teaching or anything like that, the objective of the spiritual learning and teaching should always be to learn how to live life with these feelings. And this gets very basic here, because these are very basic human feelings that are very connected to source, if you will. And I'm going to say this real slowly in terms of what the feelings are. And if you guys read the book, you know what I'm about to say, because you probably heard me. I probably wrote it in there about 100 times. We are at our spiritual peak when we experience life with feelings of peacefulness, joy, reverence, gratitude, and trust. Feelings of peacefulness, joy, reverence, gratitude, and trust. Now, this begins with feelings of peacefulness, and very often people misinterpret. They think I'm talking about peace or something, and, as far as, not engaging in war. No, and that's not what this means. Feelings of peacefulness basically means feelings of relaxation. Being relaxed in our physical bodies and being relaxed in this world. There are a few things in life that are more important than the simple powers of relaxation. And when we as human beings learn to truly relax, by virtue of breathing and meditating and just, relaxing, the totality of our physical bodies, we really change, and we become a whole heck of a lot more powerful, as a function of being relaxed people. And again, virtually every spiritual teaching and training on earth always begins with breathing, meditating, and learning how to relax. Excuse me. It's exceedingly important, and the powers of relaxation affect affect virtually every aspect of our physiology, from the tiniest molecules of our DNA on up to the biggest organs. All of our physiology is profoundly affected by our ability to relax. Feelings of joy, very similarly. There's a biochemical component to joy, and when we're feeling feelings of joy, our bodies are basically as finely tuned, or as highly tuned energetically as they can possibly be, as a function of the pure experience of feeling joy. And very often, the feeling of being relaxed will lead to the feeling of feeling joy. Peacefulness, joy, reverence, and by reverence here we start to get into some of our spiritual concepts. And by reverence here we basically mean reverence for life. Reverence, of course, for ourselves, but reverence for life, reverence for this wonderful planet that we're all a part of, and all the various features of it. Reverence for our connection to the spirit world, and those sorts of things. Gratitude for all those same things. Gratitude is something that we say by virtue of saying words of thanks and things like that. But gratitude also becomes a lifestyle. It becomes a way that we feel about life. It isn't just words that we say. It's a feeling that we have about life. We feel grateful because we just feel so fortunate to be a part of this miracle. That we're all a part of as human beings. And the final one is trust, and trust is probably the most important one. And by trust here, I basically mean trust in spirit. And what this means is that we trust that if we are appropriately connected with spirit, and connected with spirit with the vibration of these feelings that I'm talking about, if we are connected with spirit, and if we trust that connection with spirit, we basically trust that spirit will manifest everything we need in this world, and that spirit will basically take care of us. And when we trust in this way, we talked earlier about fear. When we trust in this way, when we trust in spirit, and when we place our connection with spirit first in life, all of our fears just evaporate like water. They just go away, because when we are truly connected, when our spirituality is as finely tuned as what I'm describing here, when we trust in this way, there's literally never anything to fear, ever.
Absolutely.
And experiencing life with these feelings, it's all so basic, but this basically, as spiritual people, this is basically our task. Our task is to work and to discipline ourselves to be able to experience life with feelings of peacefulness, joy, reverence, gratitude, and trust. That is our task as spiritual people. And if we engage in that task, and if we succeed at feeling life with these feelings each and every moment of life with these feelings. It's at this point where, we begin to raise the frequency of our vibration. We begin to attain a lot of the supernatural kinds of things that we talk about when we talk about spirituality. We not only connect with the forces of the spirit world, but we also connect with the forces of the natural world, the forces of our one true mother, Mother Earth, in terms of living in harmony with her. So this really is our task. This is the thing we should be focusing on. And the other thing people need to hear about this, and this is a very important part of this message, or my message, or the message that I'm guided to transmit, and that is that developing this spirituality, it does take work. And this is another area where a lot of our New Age, kind of our Pollyanna New Age people, really kind of lead us astray as far as understanding this aspect of it. They kind of lead us to believe that all these things just happen, and you can go to a weekend workshop, and you can develop all these things, and then everything's just, for the rest of your life, you're just going to be enlightened or whatever. It really doesn't work that way. Developing our spirituality, enhancing our spirituality, takes continuous work. And again, we have and I might say that this work we're talking about, the work of practicing and developing our spirituality, once we get into the swing of it, it ceases to be work. It becomes very, very pleasurable.
Absolutely.
When I'm doing my spiritual ceremonies that I do here, right now I'm surrounded by candles here. The room is primarily dark. I'm sitting in one of my spots where I pray and do those sorts of things. Once we get in the swing of working at our spirituality, it becomes very, very pleasurable. I can think of nothing I would rather be doing in life than engaging in spiritual ceremony and praying and singing and smoking my pipe and those sorts of things. It becomes extremely pleasurable. But again, one of our most, let me just finish one thing here. Again, one of our most important lessons from our indigenous relatives. Our indigenous relatives were very, very highly evolved spiritually. But they also worked very, very, very hard at it. They were engaged in lots of ceremony every day, and their ceremonies would go for, a day, 2 days, 3 days, 4 days, and 5 days, nothing but ceremony, weeks, no sleep, around the fire, singing, praying, chanting, ongoing ceremonies, ceremony to the point of exhaustion. In other words, they worked very, very hard at these things. It just didn't come and, once you get it, then you don't have to work at it anymore. No, that's not the way it works. It is necessary for us to work at these things, and but what better thing do we have to do with our time?
Yeah. So, okay, well, we're about wrapped up for the first hour here. We will be continuing on in the archive section on our website at conscious-tv.com. Jack, you want to put out your website and your books and DVDs and where people can pick them up?
Well, absolutely. It all happens at the website. The website is, my name is Jack, last name Allis, Allis, and the website is www.jackallis.com. That's jackallis.com. And let me put out a free offer to your audience here. I'm going to give my email address here, and whoever sends me an email, and whoever's email is first, I'll send them a free copy of the book. Don't forget to leave your regular mailing address. My email address is jack@jackallis.com. Send me an email. If you're the first one, I'll send you a free book. And whoever else doesn't come in first place, I'll send them a free copy of my newsletter. And that way we can stay connected, which is staying connected is another very important part of this process called the shift. If we're not connected, then we're not going to be able to make it happen.
Absolutely. Okay, well, we're going to continue this on in the archives. I want to thank everybody for listening tonight. And remember, condemnation without investigation is the height of ignorance.
Are you going to introduce the second part?
Well, I think you just did, Ramon, because we are recording. So here we are, guys. We are in the archive section with Jack Allis, and going to get into some pretty interesting things. Jack, I want to start this segment out with ceremony. I know you are really big on ritual and ceremony, and I really like your. I've seen your DVD, and I really like your approach to ceremony.
Uh-huh. Well, that's really my latest thing. I do have a spirit guide. I met my spirit guide. My spirit guide introduced himself or itself to me about 1.5 years ago when I was at a ceremonial event that was being conducted by my Mayan elder friend at Deer Mountain in Northern California. And I have basically been guided to deal with the shift in less in an academic way and more in more of an experiential way in terms of actually getting into the nuts and bolts of the spirituality aspect of it, and because when you get right down to it with the shift, it's really not that complicated a deal as far as understanding what's going on. We're living in an age of transformation, basically. Where one world's coming to an end, so that a new world can be born, and it really doesn't need to be understood, any more than that. And I think a lot of people get in, and one of the reasons that people are so attracted to all the predictions and all the doomsday stuff and everything, I think it becomes a head game, and I believe it becomes kind of a form of entertainment, for people, kind of like watching plane crashes on their TV, sort of thing. And I think it becomes a head game, and when it becomes a head game, that's when a lot of the fear enters the picture. People begin to have the attitude, "Oh, we're screwed." So I've been guided, to kind of get away from that in terms of just really cover what people really need to know about the shift, dispel a lot of the myths about the shift, and also begin to demonstrate, how people can actually practice their spirituality and develop their spirituality through the use of ceremony, which again is something I learned from by participating in the Mayan ceremonies. I've actually participated in 3 of them in the last 1.5 years. One of them was in Guatemala, and I received such a nice kind of a refresher course, or kind of a remembrance of how important ceremony is. And it certainly was, so important in the lives of the indigenous people. That was their primary method, to practice their spirituality and to enhance their spirituality was their use of ceremony. And I think this is something that I think white folks have become very, very unplugged from this as far as the importance of it. And so one of the things I've been guided to do is to begin to teach again how useful ceremony is, and as far as a means of connecting with spirit, directly with our vibration, and as a function of the ceremony. Ceremony is really anything that we do, any action that we perform with the specific intent of connecting with spirit. In other words, we're focusing on spirit, and we're focusing on connecting with spirit, and we're focusing on connecting with spirit not only with our intent, but in other words, with our focus, but we're also focused on connecting with spirit, with our vibration. In other words, creating the vibration I talked about, a few minutes ago, which is a vibration of feelings of peacefulness, joy, reverence, gratitude, and trust, which is a vibration that plugs us in, raises the frequency of our energy, and kind of plugs us into the spirit world. Well, that's what ceremony is, and that's what ceremony does. So
it doesn't have to be complicated either, does it?
Doesn't have to be complicated at all, and that's one of the things I'm teaching people. I'm teaching people that you don't have to have a Mayan teacher. You don't have to have somebody teach you how to do it. There isn't a right way to do it. There isn't a wrong way to do it. People can make up their own ceremonies. And if you saw my little DVD that you purchased, I do a lot of singing. I do a lot of chanting. I smoke the sacred pipe, and I do a lot of praying. And 95% of what I do, I just make up myself. I just make it up off the top of my head. I sing what I sing because, it's a tune that floats through my head, and it sounds nice, and then it's an easy matter to get the audience to chant along with that. I'll simply just chant a part of a chant, whatever it might be, la 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 la,
Right.
and then the audience will just repeat after me, la 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 la, and then together with playing my singing bowls and shaking my rattles and virtually all the praying I do is stuff that praying is nothing other than talking to Spirit. That's all it is talking to Spirit. And again, we can talk to Spirit in whatever way is consistent with how we're feeling in our hearts, how we're feeling in our spirits, and we can make up all of our own prayers. Another thing I like to say about ceremony, and another thing I like to say about prayer, as far as another very, very important purpose that it serves, and that's this. As I don't think I'm going to shock anybody by saying, we here living in this Western civilization, this old paradigm Western civilized world, this is a crazy world that we live in. A very, very crazy, imbalanced world. And as men and women who are born and raised in this culture, we learn a lot of crazy stuff. We learn a lot of crazy the ways of thinking in this culture. Basically, the way of thinking in this culture, it's all backwards. Basically, this culture basically sees the world as a terrible place, and it sees people as helpless victims, to do anything about it. And it's not a very it's a pretty grim picture that's painted in our minds about how the world works. Well, one of the primary purposes then of ceremony is it's a wonderful way, and prayer. It's a wonderful way that we have that we can utilize to reprogram ourselves. In other words, to reprogram our minds and to reprogram our spirits, and to get the kind of tapes running in our mind, that we want to be running in our mind, and the kind of ways of feeling in our body that we want to be feeling in our body. In other words, running new tapes, both mental tapes and emotional tapes. The use of ceremony and prayer is a wonderful, wonderful way for us to reprogram ourselves. Every time I pray, I'm basically practicing a new and better way to think. I'm thinking the way I want to be thinking. I'm thinking and talking in a way, that is in harmony with the Divine Spirit, and which is in harmony with the divinely ordered universe. That's the way I want to think. I want to get rid of all this crazy stuff in my head that I learned, as a function of being born and reared in this nutty culture that we live in. So that's a very nice side benefit of prayer and ceremony. Is it's if we engage in a couple of hours of ceremony every day, we basically are reprogramming our minds and reprogramming our spirits in a way that we want it to be, as opposed to the way that we've learned. So that's another aspect of it.
Part of that shift.
See, speaking of ceremony, I grew up in New York, but my parents are from Dominican Republic, and my mom is really into she's kind of tapered down over the years, but really I don't know if you're familiar with probably spending time in Guatemala. You're probably familiar with it. It's they call it in Spanish Santeria. In the Caribbean, it's based from the western coast of Africa, which is Yoruba, and of course when it came over to the Caribbean, they couldn't practice it openly, so they had to mix it in with Catholicism, as a lot of the Latin American indigenous cultures had to, in order to be able to still practice. So the cigar was always very, very important to my mom, and she always used it for cleansing. And even to this day, I still do it myself, though I can't get any good cigars here. But I see the real importance of it. And what I've noticed too is that what happens with a lot of the indigenous cultures and ceremonies is you get introduced into this Western society, and then now it's an evil thing. Now you're dealing with the devil, because those are a lot of the Christian mentality doesn't understand it or even try to understand it. So you have to kind of hide that side of you around a lot of people.
Absolutely, yes, absolutely. But I think one of the things that's happening in today's world that's very, very refreshing too is that a lot of the elders, in other words, a lot of the the indigenous elders who have been holding on to the ancient wisdom, all this time and passing it down in their lore and basically keeping it secret because, in many places it literally was outlawed. Like what you said in relationship to your mother. But at this time, recognizing the importance of the shift and recognizing the importance of these times we're in, many of the elders are now beginning to come out of the closet, and they're beginning to share these ancient forms of ceremony and ancient forms of wisdom with basically with the world and with any white people who are open to doing it. And that certainly was what I discovered when I discovered Tata Eric Gonzalez doing the ceremonies that he was doing in the places where he was doing them. So a lot of the elders are coming out of the closet and beginning to share the ancient wisdom now because basically because now's the time, and also they also believe that we white folks, many of us white folks, have gotten to the point where we're ready for it now.
Yeah.
For a long time, they didn't see us as ready, and but now they do see, at least many of us as ready for it. And plus, they also have a very healthy understanding. The indigenous elders, and when I was at the Deer Mountain ceremony this last summer, there were probably elders there from about, I'm going to guess about 10 different nations. There were several Mayan elders, and there were a bunch of elders from various Native American tribes. And there was another South American gentleman there. I'm not sure what nation he was from, but there were a lot of different elders down there, and they all agree about something, about one aspect of the shift, and it's this: they all agree in this whole idea of the Rainbow Man or of the Rainbow Coalition. They truly do believe that if we are to succeed at creating the new world, we're going to have to do this as a rainbow coalition. In other words, as a coalition that's made up of all the races of the planet, not just one anymore. So, many people often think of the indigenous people as pretty racist in terms of, holding some pretty hard feelings towards the white man because of the way that they've been treated all these years, and that they recognize that they need us. They need us white folks to join this rainbow coalition that they refer to so much, and as well as the Africans and the Asians and everybody else. So they're coming out of the closet, and they very much believe that we need to do this together, and that no one tribe or no one nation is capable of doing it all by themselves.
Right.
The funny thing is, I've just seen, growing up doing a lot of ceremonies and then seeing other ceremonies from other countries. Like, for example, when I went to Malaysia, I had a good chance to spend time with the Iban tribe. And I got to see their ceremonies, and then I'm like, that's not that different from my mom's. But they, for some reason, they couldn't get that to understand that, yeah, actually people do practice these things in other parts of the world. They thought it was something only more towards them. It was a little different, but it's all basically the same thing when you look at the indigenous ways of ceremony.
Well, absolutely. And when I participated in my first Mayan ceremony about a year and a half ago, I resonated so thoroughly with that ceremony. I knew nothing about Mayan culture. I knew nothing about Mayan ceremonies. I didn't know any of the songs. I didn't know any of the dances. And yet I resonated with it perfectly. And so much of it is so universal. Probably the most important thing about ceremony is in these cases almost every ceremony was around the fire. So fires are pretty universal in terms of fire's the same regardless of whatever culture you're doing it in. And I found myself very much resonating with the music, with the songs, with the chants, with the prayers, even the prayers that were done in traditional Mayan. I just had a feeling for it, and I had a real resonance for it. And I found myself I was able to sing along, with the Mayan songs really without any problem. I didn't know any of the words, but you really don't have to know the words. Eric would be singing a certain song, and I was just behind him was going, I didn't know any of the words, and yet I could still sing along, and I could still, participate in the ceremony and be a part of the ceremony, and without any problem. And that
you were connected.
Absolutely,
Yep.
big time. Uh-huh.
Yeah, I love that.
And of course, I brought my rattles that were from South America, and so I was able to, to play along a little bit myself, and it could help to create the music. And a rattle's a rattle. A rattle sounds the same regardless of what country you're in or whatever tribe you're representing. Same thing with a singing bowl. A singing bowl is a singing bowl. It makes a sound, and that sounds the same no matter where you are.
Yep.
Yeah. When I was younger, I used to I was a dancer, and I was trying to get into the whole professional dancing thing. But when you're dancing and you're into the right song that really brings you up, you feel so plugged in, and it's the same for singing when you're connected to that right vibration frequency. Because it's the older I get, the more I realize that life is all about vibration, frequency, and awareness. And when you're plugged into that, it's just amazing. Because sometimes I would dance and do things that I'm like, how did I do that? And then, my dancer friends would come up to me, hey, can you teach me that? And I was like, I have to teach myself how to do that. Because it's almost like the music, you become the instrument, and the music is playing you, not the other way around.
Yeah, absolutely. You said that very nicely. I think the music, it takes a hold of us. It takes a hold of our hearts. It takes a hold of our spirits, and it does so vibrationally. And it literally, as far we all learn from the quantum physicists that we are all energy, and as such, there is a frequency to our energy. And when we're engaged in those kinds of ceremony with music and dancing and those kinds of things, the vibration of the ceremony or the singing or whatever you're doing will actually, take a hold of your heart, take a hold of your spirit, and actually raise the frequency of your energy. And one of the things that I've learned lately is that higher frequencies of energy, basically that's what the spirit world is. The spirit world is a world of higher frequency energy. The energy that our physical bodies consist of is a very, very low and very, very, very dense frequency. But when we have out-of-body experiences, we basically raise the frequency of our energy so that this energy or this energy body, that we can refer to, actually transcends our physical body and actually, rises up in frequency. And when we are engaged in a process like that, and when we are raising the vibration of our frequency, it's at that point where we begin to touch these other dimensions of spirit, which are higher frequency dimensions. So that's one of the when we talk about raising dimensions, that's one of the things that we're talking about. We're basically basically moving to another world. We're moving to a world that isn't as heavy and is more light and is more energetic, as opposed to this heavy material, dense, third-dimensional dimension that we have down here.
That vibration you get right before you leave your body, absolutely one of the most amazing feelings I've ever had. So the raising of the vibration through the whole body, it almost explodes, the vibration, the way it increases, and then all of a sudden, boom, you're out.
Right. Well, a lot of people say it does explode, as far as the Kundalini energy kind of concept of it. It kind of just blows right out of the the crown chakra of your head, basically. Yeah.
Right.
And there's a lot of different ways to achieve that. There's a lot of different. I had a very intense out-of-body experience the last time I did a sweat lodge down in Guatemala. I completely left my body. My body was so incapacitated by the sweating and everything, and it wasn't of much use to me anymore anyway. I was just kind of lying on the ground in a blob. But my consciousness just absolutely took off and just was soaring around the universe as my body was, basically incapacitated from 2 hours of a sweat lodge. But it was a wonderful, wonderful experience to. I'm 62 years old, and my old body's getting kind of creaky and sore in my old age. I'm in good shape and everything, but there is that aspect of it. And all of a sudden, there wasn't any of that anymore. I couldn't feel my physical body, and it felt so good not to feel my physical body and just to be outside of it. Not to mention staring on the ground, up into the up into the Guatemalan sky, which is in and of itself is there's just continuous shooting stars. The Guatemalan sky is so bright and so vivid and so magical. It's just wonderful.
Well, one of my out-of-body experiences, I wanted to go. My aim was just straight up outer space. Let's go check out the universe. And as I got out of what I would call the influence of the planet, I looked around and it was absolutely stunning, the colors and the beauty of the universe. And I saw, I learned how they came up with the different images for the constellations, because I saw them in this experience. I actually saw the outlines of the figures they were outlined in a gold glow. It was absolutely amazing. I love. I'm kind of an amateur painter, and it's one of the ones that's on my list to paint. I'm going to have to do that one because it was absolutely amazing.
Well, when we talk about our ancient indigenous brothers and sisters who saw those constellations for the first time, that's probably the way that they saw them then, because they basically, our indigenous relatives saw the world differently than how we see it in Western civilization, because they saw it, through the eyes. Their world also included the spirit world.
Right.
So, they saw them through those eyes also. They didn't only see them through their practical eyes, they also saw them through their spiritual eyes. So the world looked different to them, and when they looked up into the sky at the constellations, in all likelihood they saw like the embodiment of those figures. They didn't see clusters of stars. They probably saw the embodiment of those figures or deities, much as you saw them.
Right.
And I think one of the things as spiritual people, we want to endeavor, to be able to see in that way again, to be able to see, in a more spiritual way as opposed to in a limited physical way.
I think it's coming rapidly.
Well, and it's a question of us just getting to work on it too. I know I'm working at it, and it sounds like you're working at it, and we just, enough of us have to work at it, and when enough of us are succeeding at this, and it's at that point where we will, have enough power to basically change the world.
I kind of got a bit of a message that told me that the significant number of 144,000, which is in all sorts of different cultures, that is the number that of true seekers that have to reach a certain point to hit that tipping point for, the 100th monkey effect. Are you familiar with that?
Well, critical mass is what.
Right, critical mass. Yeah.
100. So that doesn't seem like very many.
It doesn't, but if you really think about it, I mean, there's a lot of people out there that are doing this stuff. They're exploring this. But they're keeping it at arm's length. They're not really there. There's not, when you really think about it, there's not really that many people that are taking it really deeply into their hearts.
Well, and a lot of people are, as I said a second ago, a lot of people are faking it too. They're pretending to be, spiritually enlightened, and they really aren't. It's just a big con job. So, don't mean to sound like a cynic, but there are an awful lot of those types. And there's a lot of people who are just crazy. They come across as real spiritual people, and they're just nutty as a fruitcake. So,
we interviewed Ginny Gentry. I don't know if you're familiar with her work or not, but we interviewed her a couple weeks ago, and she said that exact thing. She said, I was just doing it kind of like because it was a neat thing to do, until one day when she decided that no, I need to make this real, and she hit a place inside her where she decided that it was time to make it real, and she was just absolutely floored when she made that leap, that quote-unquote leap of faith, and really started her true spiritual path.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
There's she had a experience. I think it was in Peru where she met I believe it was a Quechua elder, and he sat her basically in a room full of mirrors and just made her sit there and really break down. And he just kept asking her, "Who's that? Who's that?" At each mirror, just kept asking, "Who's that? Who's that? Who's that?" Until she like started breaking down, pretty much.
Mm-hmm.
So that was the kick in the butt for her,
Right.
which we've all had.
What I said a little while ago. This stuff does take work, and very often when we embark upon, our own path of ascension, our own path of personal growth, and evolution in these ways. Another thing that we learn is that a good deal of this process can be quite painful. When we face those parts of ourselves that we don't like very much, and that we want to get rid of. Very often, those parts of ourselves can be pretty ugly, and pretty dark, and pretty, and experiencing them and seeing them and endeavoring to get rid of them can be painful. And I know I've been working. I'm 62 years old. I've been working on this stuff now over 40 years, and I still feel that. I still feel some of that pain, from time to time. Certainly, it's diminishing, significantly, but from time to time, I still, encounter my own dark side, and it still hurts. So, but it's all part of the process.
Yeah.
And since I understand it now, it doesn't, freak me out the way it did, 30 years ago. I knew when I would see those things, it would just freak me out completely. But now that I understand it, it doesn't. I can see it without giving it any power.
Yeah. Before we run out of time, I want to ask you our key question. What?
Oh, I know. I think I know what this is.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
What is consciousness, and how does it affect our reality?
Okay. Well, I'm kind of prepped on this one because
I'll tell you what, you really flowed, and it was awesome the other day.
Yeah.
Well, let me see if I can repeat what I said the other day when we did this interview, and I kind of flubbed it and had to do it over again tonight. My first instinctual reaction to that is it reminded me of my days when I was studying Ayn Rand's objectivist philosophy, which I do need to say that I don't endorse that philosophy anymore. I was really into it for about 10 years there, but Ayn Rand, basically, her objectivist philosophy basically just completely discredits any form of spirituality completely. Her philosophy is very reality-based and this world-based and those sorts of things. But so I don't endorse this anymore. But she was a wonderful philosopher as far as her understanding of how the rational part of our minds work. In that area, she just had no peer ever. She was just the best. And she said that there were certain concepts that she referred to as axiomatic. And what she meant by axiomatic was that you couldn't reduce them any further than what they already were. They just simply were what they were. And her three axioms were identity, existence, and consciousness. And so in other words, what that means is she would basically was saying we really can't define consciousness any more than just saying it's consciousness. And whatever we know about consciousness, we simply know as a function of knowing it. But it's one of those things that we just really can't come up with words to define or describe. And it's interesting. I was reading, I was scanning through one of my old Don Juan books by Carlos Castaneda today, and Castaneda very much made that same point. He made it over and over and over again, or the Don Juan sorcerer character did. He kept telling Carlos that when it comes to understanding what he referred to as the Nawal, or what he referred to as the spiritual aspect of things, he said, these are things we cannot define. We can't pin them down in words. These are things that are basically beyond our rational comprehension, and we simply know about them because we intuit them. On the one hand, we intuit them, and we as spiritual people, we can see them, in altered states of consciousness, and we understand them on that basis, but we don't understand them, with our rational thinking capability, because our rational thinking capability basically hits a wall as far as a lot of these things are concerned. And when you asked me the question the other day, when I thought about saying consciousness was one of those axioms that we really can't define, I I'm really kind of comfortable with that. I think, in terms of seeing it in that way. But then I went to my quantum physics model in terms of it's such a wonderful way of understanding consciousness and energy and how all these different pieces fit together. Because basically the quantum physicists, they discovered that everything in the universe consisted of energy. It was a dynamic web, pulsating web of pulsating, vibrating energy, vibrating at lightning fast speeds. They also discovered that all of this energy was connected to all the rest of this energy. In other words, it was this vast spider web of interconnected energy. And then the other thing that the quantum physicists discovered, and this is on a more subjective basis, but they all agreed, that this world, of this pulsating world of interconnected energy, they all agreed without really being able to define what they were talking about scientifically. And again, we're back to not having the ability to define here. But they all agreed that this world that they were studying, that this world that they were learning about, had to be governed in some way by an unseen intelligence of some kind. And it was just too dazzling, it was too intricate, it was just too amazing. There's no way this world could have been just, happenstantial, or could have just happened randomly. They said there has got to be an unseen intelligence that is governing the behavior of these energy forms and the behavior of the material forms that this energy takes. So that's always been a very useful way for me to understand this whole notion of consciousness, and this whole notion of the consciousness, not only consciousness that exists throughout the universe. What the quantum physicists learned is that they learned that basically everything in the universe consists of two basic things. It consists of energy, and it consists of consciousness. In other words, it was energy, but it was energy that thought. And when you think about that, really is kind of the essence of spirituality, is that there is an unseen intelligence that is operating in this world of energy. And this consciousness we're talking about is pervasive. It's all throughout everything in the universe, down to the tiniest pebble. It all has consciousness. It all has energy. In other words, everything in this energy thinks. And whenever I refer to the divine spirit, I refer to it as the divine spirit of a living, thinking universe. In other words, this whole thing is alive. And we can think about consciousness, we can not only think about it in macroscopic terms, as in, the consciousness of the cosmos, or God, or spirit, or whatever you'd like to refer to it in that way, or we can think of it in more microscopic terms, as far as our consciousness, as individual human beings, or the consciousness of any other living being, or any other thing for that matter. So that's about the best I can do to define what is meant by consciousness. As far as what part consciousness plays in our world, it plays a vitally important part in our world. However, there is a great misconception today. And the misconception today is one of the ones that's kind of rampant in network marketing circles, and you saw it in the DVD The Secret, which I think was really pretty awful. It's this whole notion that our reality, as human beings, our reality is determined by our perception. In other words, perception creates reality. That is profoundly not true. Our perception co-creates reality. But reality does indeed exist independently from us. When back in the 70s, when the hippies used to go to the Indian reservations in those days, and were connecting with the Native Americans, and were trying to learn from them and everything as a function of what they were doing in their whole hippie thing. They would take this notion of we create our reality with our perception, and they would run that by the Native Americans. And the Native Americans thought it was the silliest thing they ever heard in their life. Because the Native Americans look at this universe. They think, are you really saying that we create this universe with our perception? You've got to be kidding me. In relationship to the immensity out there, we human beings are just absolute cosmic pipsqueaks. So, however, it works both ways. There is definitely truth to this whole notion that we do create at least aspects of our reality with our perception. But I think the best model to put this in is the whole model of co-creation. And this is a model in which we as human beings are kind of co-divine spirits, if you will, or co-gods, or co-creators. Because we as human beings, in my metaphysical system that I have, there are basically 7 elements. And the 7 elements are, and the first 4 are physical, and the last 3 are more abstract or non-physical. The 7 elements are fire, earth, air, water, energy, consciousness, and spirit. Those are the 7 elements that play a part in co-creating this world, and co-creating this life, and co-creating this universe. We as human beings are the embodiment of all 7 of those elements. We have all 7 of those elements within us, within our totality, body, mind, and spirit. As such, certainly on more of a microscopic as opposed to a macroscopic level, we are co-creators of this world. We are co-creators of this life, of this universe. In other words, we play a vitally important role in co-creating our world and co-creating the world. We're a vitally important part of it. However, but we need to go back to the fact that this whole perception is reality notion, it's definitely a two-way street. The universe does exist independently from us, and we also exist here, contained within our own shell of energy and consciousness and spirit and matter. And the actual co-creative part of this is more of a relationship between forces, as opposed to one force controlling another. For example, us controlling reality with our perception. It doesn't work that way. It works more on the basis of us flowing with the forces of our universe, flowing with the forces of our life, and co-creating on that basis, on the basis of being in relationship with the world around us, in relationship with the forces around us, which we also embody.
With that being said, there's a video that we have in our video links, and it talks about consciousness. And basically, they did an experiment where they put you in a CAT scan and they have you press these buttons and they look at your brain. And what they realize is that six seconds before you make the decision to press the button, your brain already knew that it was going to do that. So 6 seconds before it knew that you were going to press the button on your left hand, and then 6 seconds it would know that you were going to press the button with your right hand. And the guy who was the host of the show, it just completely floored him. And he just sat down, and you can look at his face that he was genuinely floored. It was such a shock to him. And it's oh, they just don't get it.
And yes, it's I referred earlier to the whole notion of reprogramming ourselves and being able to have the kind of thoughts in our mind, or the kind of thoughts in our consciousness that we want to have in our consciousness. And certainly that is a feature of this thing. We're in this culture, we're raised to see the world as a terrible place where terrible things happen. And certainly that's not. I don't want that to be a feature of my consciousness, as far as how my mind is programmed. So then it's imperative for me to reprogram myself so that I can see the world differently, so that I can see the world in conjunction with how I want the world to be. I want the world to be a reflection of the divine order of a divinely ordered universe, and I want to see myself as a reflection of that. So it's necessary for me to recondition myself to be able to see the world the way I want to see it, as opposed to seeing it the way in which I was taught to see it. And so certainly there is an element of me creating my world, within that, me seeing the world that I choose to see, as opposed to to seeing it some other way. but to say that I create the world with my consciousness would be way oversimplified.
Yeah, well, that co-creation thing, I mean, the way you explain that there, yes, absolutely. When we start looking at the world differently, it actually grows around us too. Other people and other events in your life kind of tailor themselves to that. Those synchronicities, everything starts flowing in the right direction. And that's part of this. That's part of this big awakening that's going on, or the quote unquote awakening, where people are starting to. We're like an antibody. I kind of see it like we're people that are on the true spiritual path are sort of an antibody to the diseases of this planet right now, and we're spreading the true consciousness and the truth about life. And it's growing, and when we start to embody that and start to live that, it's contagious.
Yeah, I like that. That's a nice model. That we're healthy antibodies. I like that.
Yes.
Yeah.
I like that. As opposed to being pests that are just
a cancer,
the whole thing out of balance.
Right. So back to
talk about the.
Go ahead.
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Well, I was gonna go back to Carlos Castaneda. That's Don Juan series was one of the first. Right after I had my quote unquote beginning of my awakening, because I'm still awakening, but the beginning of my awakening, I had gone through the Christianity thing, and I was just right on the tail end of learning what I needed to learn from that. At that point, I still learned things from that theology, but right at the tail end of that, I'd come across the whole series of Don Juan books, and I was absolutely amazed that book had so much influence on me, or those books had so much influence on me for opening my mind to other possibilities.
Me too. They were definitely very formative influence, and they continue to be. I think I've gotten to the point where I've read them so many times that not all of Castaneda's books are good, but and he kind of really misses the boat on a couple of them. But the ones that are good are really good. Particularly Journey to Ixtlan and Tales of Power are just masterpieces from beginning to end.
I'm going to have to pick those up again and read them again.
Yeah,
if you haven't done it, I was just going to say, if you haven't done it in a long time, you'll be really pleasantly surprised. I don't think they lose a thing. I haven't read them.
22 years ago.
One of the reasons they don't lose anything is because, and this is it's for the same reason that the indigenous wisdom never loses anything, and it's because they're all derived from really the most important source of any of our knowledge. That everything that the Don Juan system was all about was derived from nature, and it was derived from his connection with spirit, and that never loses its punch. It's just always as long as we're living in harmony with nature, that's a model that will last forever.
There was one. I'm trying to remember which book was it that I read. When I read them was 1993 or 94. Anyway, so there's a part where Castaneda goes outside and he sees Don Juan doing this thing where he starts making rain. And he's doing these chants and he's outside and he's making rain, and it just completely, you could tell it completely blew his mind. And the reason why I bring that up, have you yourself had any experience where with your intention or your ceremonies, you've done things that shock you, where you kind of go back and you're like, did I just do that, or was that a coincidence?
Well, yes. I mean, I've had some pretty incredible spiritual experiences, and I've had many of those. I think they'd have to be categorized as supernatural or paranormal, and in most cases they weren't. It wasn't necessarily something I was willing to happen. Usually these kinds of things happen, when you least expect them to, and what happens is not specifically what you expected to have happen. When my spirit guide actually introduced itself to me a year and a half ago at Deer Mountain, was very much an experience like that for me. I don't know if I want to go into the whole detail of it, but it was definitely very, very otherworldly, and it was very, very clear that Spirit was speaking to me very, 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 very clearly, very directly in words. The sensation of it was kind of like my entire body was just taken in. Very often, when I do have my specific connections with the spirit world, very often do come when my body is kind of taken over by kind of like a tractor beam. And it's sort of a tractor beam that just feels really good, and it feels really calm and relaxed and joyful and peaceful and very kind of elevated. I feel kind of high and like I'm kind of floating. And it's at times like that when I will receive messages from the spirit world, very, very clear and direct messages from the spirit world, just in terms of guidance and lessons, and implanting something into me that wasn't there a minute ago. And when the grandfathers spoke to me, my spirit guide goes by the name of the Council of the Grandfathers, and when they introduced themselves to me at Deer Mountain, I had that physical feeling that my body was just completely taken over with these feelings of love and joy and peacefulness. And then the words popped into my head, welcome to the Council of the Grandfathers. And I had been having some spiritual doubts at that time, and they added, kind of dispelled my spiritual doubts by saying, you are doing perfectly. And it's funny how when the spirit world talks to me, they talk in a way that is so simple and so concise, and so it's almost like a different language. The words that they use are so pure and so clean and so holographic in terms of almost every word, has like holographic meaning. And it's completely positive. There's never a shred of negativity in any of these communications. But yeah, there've been a lot of those kinds of things. I'm very blessed to have had lots of supernatural experiences in my life, and it's always a blessing. And I know that there's going to be more, and I can't wait for the next one.
Right. I have little meetings here, or I call them soul chats, where just a few people here locally that we get together every week, and I suppose I'm taking the place of a teacher here, but I get what I call plugged in, and it's just an absolutely amazing feeling where the things are just flowing through me that, and a lot of times I'll say things that I go, after I've said them, I go to myself, wow, where did that come from? And, those are those downloads that are absolutely amazing.
For me, there's usually no mistaking it. When Spirit's talking with me, I know it right away.
Well, I know where this is, I know where it's coming from, but.
But it's not like a question of, is that just more of the stuff in my head, or was that, no, it's like real clear. It's like right away, no, that was Spirit.
Oh,
right. When the grandfather spoke to me at Deer Mountain, I didn't even for a minute think, oh my gosh, I'm hallucinating. No, I knew it was the real deal right off the bat. And one of the reasons I knew it was just because of how my body felt.
Right.
Definitely a transcendental feeling.
Yeah. Speaking of the way your body felt, I always ask this to all the guests. Have you felt, especially this year, or even yesterday or the day before yesterday, anything like have you ever felt like any time, like you shift timelines, or just a vast of energy that just all of a sudden you're hit with, and you're not doing any ceremony, just you're walking on the street or you're getting a cup of water, and then all of a sudden, boom, you're hit.
Where you feel like something in the world has changed in a significant manner.
Well, certainly the time aspect of it, I do. As far as time for me has become very, very skewed. there's times when time seems to be speeding up just beyond my ability to to manage it. And there's other times when time just seems to slow down to such a degree that it's truly wondrous to have time slowing down in such a way that you can really kind of hold on to things that are normally moving past too quickly. But my whole time perspectives have become very kind of skewed. In kind of a funny way, things have become sort of timeless. You're either going so fast or going so slow that relatively speaking, time seems to have lost all of its meaning. So.
Yeah, I think I can relate with that in a fashion.
You mean where you get a lot of stuff done and you think a couple hours pass by, and when you look, it's only been an hour that passed by.
I've
got so much done.
I am one of my power animals is the turtle, and I am definitely at my best when I move very, very slowly. I'm not only my best because I feel better that way, but very often I notice that I can be pushing myself because I've got to get this done. I'm writing a chapter in the book, and I got to get it done by the end of the day, and I find myself pushing myself and kind of forcing myself to work and kind of making a conscious effort to sort of speed things up. And I've noticed that when I do that, I tend to be a whole heck of a lot less efficient. And when I'm able to just really slow things down and to work in that slow modality, very often in the actual moment itself, it feels like I'm never getting anything done. And yet, at the end of the day, I look back and I go, wow, look at everything you got done today.
Yeah.
And but it's certainly not being done by any conscious effort. It's not being done as a function of me, speeding myself up or trying harder or anything like that. It's like as a function of slowing down. It's like as a function of slowing down and speeding up. Basically, is what it consists of, and it's kind of hard to come up with words for it. But that's a very common thing for me to look back at the day and go, wow, it didn't seem like I did anything, but look at this mountain of work I got done. And trust me, that's the way I want to get work done. I want to get work done very slowly, calmly, in a very relaxed fashion, and have it work in a more efficient way that way, rather than I'm not a real big fan of putting a lot of pressure and stress on ourselves. I don't think that ever helps anybody ever.
Yeah.
Yeah. I've gotten the feeling that we still have a lot of work to do as far as the entire planet, but I've been feeling that things have been changing or shifting in the right direction. Of course, it's not where we want to be, but in other words, I feel that we're on the right direction, and like the fear is gone. I'm not worried that as long as we keep on the same track, these small groups that are doing their thing, that we're fine. Because what me and Tom were asking you basically was, I've experienced where I felt like a change on the planet, and it's like, oh okay, it's a good change. We've shifted a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if I've become more sensitive. Tom, do you think you've become more sensitive to
the last year especially, my sensibilities, I guess you could call them, have just, 1,000% different. My intuition is awake again. And my senses are just acute.
Yeah, very often too. It's very often if we look at everything through our old paradigm eyes, very often it might seem like things aren't changing or things are getting worse, and you look, if you watch TV and you look at all the the portrayal of all the terrible things that are happening in the world and all that kind of stuff, it may seem like we're moving backwards, but that's strictly as an old paradigm way of looking at things. If we look at things through our new paradigm eyes, and very often, like I say, when things change, usually when things change, and particularly when things change dramatically, almost always, it doesn't change in the way we expected it to change, and it changes when we least expect it to change. So things seem like they're happening differently than what we expect. But that doesn't mean that they're not happening. There's unquestionably a tremendous awakening going on right now on the planet, and I can talk about this from firsthand experience because I've been talking about basically all the things that I'm talking about now. I've been talking about them now for a good 10 years. And 10 years ago, when I talked about a lot of the stuff that I talk about, people just thought I was crazy. They just wanted to run me out of town on a rail.
Yeah.
I had to be really careful who I said this stuff to. I couldn't just say it. I had to be really careful.
Exactly.
And it was tar and feathers time. And I just got back from the Los Angeles Conscious Life Expo, which is there's visited by probably in excess of 10,000 people, over the course of a weekend. And I'm so struck at how I don't have to watch what I'm saying anymore at all. I can say whatever I want to say. People are getting it. They're nodding their heads. They're getting it. We're speaking the same language. And 10 years ago, that would have been a complete impossibility. Have you guys read any of David Icke's?
Oh yeah.
Books?
Yeah.
Okay. It was interesting because we were one day I was talking with this one guy, and he was talking about his ability to see lizzies. In other words, to see lizards, kind of David Icke terminology.
Right.
And a bunch of us were talking, and we were kind of talking in that kind of way, like making those kinds of references. Yeah, this person could see. And I'm thinking, 5 years ago, that person could not have made that statement. Nobody had known what the hell he was talking about.
Right.
And now here he is saying, oh, I could see lizzies. He's saying that to 10 people, and they're all nodding their head, going, oh, yeah, okay, I know what he means. And I'm thinking, well, that's really quite something, isn't it?
Yeah.
In terms of the subtle way that things that things change, and believe me, I'm a firsthand experience of this because I know what it was like 10 years ago to have absolutely nobody in the world had the faintest idea what I was talking about, particularly when you're talking about New World Order stuff. Around the time of 9/11. I mean,
right.
You just didn't want to be saying any of that stuff.
Nah.
Right.
There's definitely an awakening going on, and very often it might be hard to perceive because even nowadays, when we refer to the masses, our numbers are still very, very minimal. When we compare them, to the masses as a whole, and when we go out, when we're around, masses of people who are, still in their old paradigm mode, it can seem like there's so many of them and so few of us. But a lot of that is just perceptual distortion. It's just again, that's seeing it, through our old paradigm eyes as opposed to seeing it through our new paradigm eyes. And a lot of these changes are a lot more subtle and they just don't work in the way that we expect them to.
Right.
It's definitely happening.
Yep.
Yeah. I want to mention really quickly. There was a news. I don't know if you heard about this indigenous Ecuadorian woman who basically took on Chevron in Ecuador for all the pollutions and stuff like that, and helped bring like a $9.5 billion fine towards Chevron. And I just find it, speaking of, things changing, this is amazing because this is an indigenous woman whose Spanish is not even her first language. Like, she learned that later on. And I believe it's Quechua, her first language. And it's just amazing. Exactly what you're talking about. Things are changing, but
I wonder if did she use magic or?
I wouldn't be surprised.
By looking at her, I would have to say yes. But did she do it out in the open? Probably not.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right.
Yeah. So we're winding down here, Jack. So give you a few minutes to leave us a parting statement, and then get out all your website and books and DVDs and stuff again. And
can we keep Jack for another 5 hours and talk?
Yeah, this has been a fantastic interview, by the way.
Thank you.
I'm
You guys are good too. You guys are, it's easy to be comfortable with you guys.
great. Thank you. So, got a
Parting
parting statement for us?
I don't know if I can add anything to what I've always said. It always comes back to the same stuff. It's just the same things over and over and over again. Let me just leave you with a mantra that Ramon mentioned earlier. In these times of monumental earth changes, in these times of profound paradigm shifts, where the world is literally, slipping out from underneath us, the primary source of our protection in the face of these monumental changes and challenges, and the primary source of our power to create the new world, of light and spirit, is the power of our higher consciousness and spirituality. And whenever we talk about the shift, it always comes back to that. If we are, who was it Einstein said, you cannot, solve a problem by using the same methodology that created the problem to begin with.
Right.
And that same principle applies to our old paradigm world. If we are to let go of the old paradigm and create the new paradigm, it's necessary for us to do this in a new paradigm way as opposed to an old paradigm way. And it always comes back to the higher power of our higher consciousness and spirituality. And that's what we're being called upon at this time to develop and enhance. And those are our primary weapons, and those are our primary tools, and it always comes back to that. And it also, that is the, as far as how we see the world, and as far as making sense out of all the transformation that we see in the world, those also are the eyes that we need to look at all this through. Because very often, if we look at it through our old paradigm eyes, it can get pretty scary, and everything's just coming to an end, and ain't it awful? But if we look at it through our new paradigm eyes, and if we remember the prophecies, and if we remember the ancient wisdom, we've been told for thousands and thousands of years, we've been told that these things were due to happen during this time of ours, and now we're there, and it's happening, and yes, indeed, even though it is challenging, these challenges are indeed blessings, and it's necessary for us to be able to see it that way. So embrace the change. Don't fight it. And remember that the change is not only happening external to us, it's happening on every possible level. It's happening inside of us. It's happening outside of us. It's happening everywhere. No stone, no matter how small, will be left unturned, just as no object, no matter how huge, such as, the sun or our solar system, none of these things will be exempt from this. It's all part of this. It's all involved in this process of change, and it is a blessing. It's a wonderful time to be alive, and I invite you guys and each and every one of your listeners to, for us all to join together in this process, because it is a question. We do have to join together. This is something we have to be connected. At the very least, we have to be energetically connected. In order to pull this off. So it's necessary for us to come together, and that's one of the reasons why you guys doing the kind of work you're doing is so good. And this whole internet radio revolution that's happening right now is such a wonderful way to, how many countries? 46?
46
wow.
now, yeah.
46 countries. That's quite a gathering, isn't it? And but that's what it's going to take. So I invite you guys, or I encourage you guys to keep up the good work that you're doing. I'm going to keep doing what I'm doing on my end,
and we hope to see you this summer.
Well,
Yep.
Yeah, I'll be in your neck of the woods. I'll be at EC Ranch weekend at the end of July. So, and then I'll be at Deer Mountain the weekend after that. So.
Well, I'll definitely be there. So
All right, great.
I will definitely meet you then. That'll be awesome.
To meeting you. And I invite everybody to go to my website, www.jackallis.com, JACKALLIS.com. Everything that you hear me talking about, it's all there, all my books, all my DVDs, lots of videos, lots of goodies, things you can play around with. It's a great website, so I invite everybody to go. And please subscribe to my newsletter. Again, that's the best way that I could stay connected with lots and lots of people is sending out my monthly newsletter. So I encourage people to subscribe to that. I don't send out any junk. I don't send out any porn or any stupid stuff. a monthly newsletter that's just jam packed with lots of good stuff. And that's all you'll get.
No porn.
Okay,
you have to go somewhere else for the porn.
Well, I want to thank everybody for joining us tonight, and I thank Jack for being here and sharing his wisdom and experience. And
don't forget to thank your friends outside your window.
Yeah, that was quite an experience.
Go outside, Tom. Go outside, hang out there for a while.
I'm actually going to when I get off here. It's dark now, and so I'm going to go out and see what's going on. So, okay, well, condemnation without investigation is the height of ignorance. Hope to see you all next week.
See you next week.
All right. Good night, everybody.
Good night.